Hello, welcome and salutations to Den of Otaku, Den of Geek's official anime discussion series, where we break down all things anime, Japanese pop culture, and all the biggest developments going on in the industry. I am your host, Daniel Kurland, and in this episode, I am so excited to talk about a new series that I just recently fell in love with. This is WEBTOON Unscrolled's viral hit. This is a series by Taejun Pak and Junghyun, and in this episode, we're going to break down why this is such an exciting series, the kind of complex stuff they're doing with their protagonist and the slippery slope that he finds himself on, and why it's just kind of the perfect modern series that holds this scathing mirror up to society that couldn't have come along at a better time, honestly, in my opinion. So let's do it, fellow otaku. Let's log on to YouTube and go viral. Okay, I always think it is so exciting when you don't just find like an exciting new series, but one that comes around at the perfect time in a way where everything kind of just amplifies the story that's being told and makes it hit even harder. And that's exactly what I think is going on with Taejun Pak and Junghyun's viral hit. This is a series that has been compiled into WEBTOON Unscrolled's graphic novel, and it's a really interesting kind of change of pace on the standard action story. What it does, though, is it tells like a really simple idea in a really creative and rewarding way. So just to kind of break down what's going on in this series, you have this scrawny high school student named Hobin who really isn't trying to ruffle any feathers. He's keeping his head down, he's minding his own business. He really just wants to pay his mom's mounting hospital bill. She's stuck in the hospital. One day, though, he kind of loses his cool. He ends up fighting someone, and the whole encounter gets caught on camera. It streams on YouTube, and suddenly Hobin becomes this viral hit, and he finds himself in this interesting situation where he can continue to fight on YouTube to build revenue, which can then in turn help his mother pay her bills. But at the same time, he has to become more comfortable with this. He is dealing with needing to fight progressively stronger opponents to appease his subscribers. And he also kind of bonds with another mysterious YouTube streamer who also has experience in the fighting realm. So a lot of this comes together in a really creative way. It's an action story, but doing a lot more than just a standard showing you combat. At the same time, what I think is really cool about Viral Hit is there is a real respect for martial arts and just the craft of combat. The way in which these panels are drawn and the illustrations going on in the series, they really show the meticulous nature of what it means to work your body in a fight, how you kind of need to move yourself if you are involved in this sort of engagement, and it really takes the craft seriously in a way that I think is cool. Sometimes you see plenty of action series that just focus on spectacle. You have superpowered people just clashing into each other. Viral Hit really tries to understand the craft and what goes on in a fight in order to kind of make that mean more. And it's just a really interesting, grounded approach that does get lost in kind of more heightened storytelling at times, but this really realistic approach to combat really just stood out to me. And if you have any interest in just the art of martial arts, there's a lot to appreciate in Viral Hit. So in Viral Hit, you have the story that I think kind of at its core is Fight Club or Megalobox meets Oshinoko with some solo leveling thrown in for good measure. You see a lot of shades of those series going on in here, and what I really resonated with in Viral Hit is you have a story that facilitates constant action, but just it really is this cathartic character study at the end of the day. Hobin is stuck in this awful situation where he needs to keep fighting in order to engage with his audience, to build greater subscription, to build, more revenue so he can help his mom, but he really has no interest in fighting beyond this. He isn't someone who enters this series wanting to be the strongest, that he wants to intimidate others. This isn't a character like Goku, for instance, who just gets a charge on fighting itself to train and to just be the strongest person there is. stories. This is almost just like a way to make ends meet for Hoban, and I think that's a really unique change of pace. WEBTOON Unscrolled does such a good job with with these like underdog action stories you get. Viral Hit very much fits into that you have a character who's engaging in these really over-the-top scenarios and does well, and you're rooting for, but at the same time, he's this fish out of water that doesn't belong, yet is learning how to swim at the same time. It's a really cool kind of dynamic, and like I said, there's a lot of action in Viral Hit, but I think at its heart, like, this is the ultimate character study. You're interested in Hoban. Viral Hit really makes it easy to fall in love with Hoban. You want to see him succeed. You want to see him help his mother. You want to see him just get out of this difficult situation. We sometimes take for granted just like how important a protagonist is in a show just because sometimes they hit the ground running and are so fully formed. But if you don't have the right hero at the center of your story, no one cares. All the best writing and storytelling doesn't matter if you don't have someone that the audience wants to root behind. And Hoban is such a fascinating, just kind of audience surrogate stand-in that you do connect with him, you do care about him, but it's interesting to see him just head down this very dark path, almost like gladiatorial combat or something. He finds himself in this difficult situation where he needs to fight to help his mother out, but at the same time, you're wondering, is he losing some of himself in the process? Like, as he fights, is he enjoying it maybe a little too much? Is he heading down a dark path? And Viral Hit explores some really interesting questions of like, maybe Hoban does succeed in this quest, but is he going to be the same person that he was when he started this? Is he even going to care about his mother after he's beaten 100 people on camera? It's a really interesting idea. And some of my favorite series of all time are series like Attack on Titan and Code Geass, and even Solo Leveling, which we mentioned before, are series that begin with a tortured protagonist who slowly kind of gets pushed down the path of antagonism. And that's not to say that's exactly what goes on with Hoban and Viral Hit, but the series is interested in those shades of gray. It wants you to be worried. It wants you to be concerned that Hoban maybe isn't always doing the right things, but at the same time, you do need to root for him because he is doing something altruistic here. He's gotten involved in all of this just because he wants to help someone else. It's a very selfless quest. It's not like he wants to win prize money and get bragging rights. There's a very humane center to the story, and I just think that's what really stands Viral Hit out from many of the other series that are doing kind of comparable ideas. And at the same time, Viral Hit is a very dark series. It is a very character-defining series, and it has lots of action, but at the same time, it's very careful to have a sense of humor about itself, and there is a very earnestness when it comes to Hoban's, like, tender crush. He has a crush that he tries to make waves with, and it's very exciting just to see that kind of go on. And Viral Hit is very careful to cultivate a story that just connects with all audiences. Yes, there's a lot of action here, and you might be getting a lot of like the shonen crowd that are tuning into this in the first place, but at the same time, it does care about romance, it does care about slice of life, shenanigans, and just kind of these really more muted moments that aren't afraid to get silly. I love an action series that doesn't take itself too seriously and can just get lost in mundane situations. Again, this Viral Hit does get very serious, but the fact that it can be a broader series and cater to audiences of all ages and shapes and sizes is just so exciting. I think WEBTOON Unscrolled in general does a really good job of picking series that do kind of have that 4-quadrant necessity and are going to connect with all audiences, and I think Viral Hit is just one of the more recent examples of finding a series that doesn't just connect with one audience very well, but has something for everyone and you can kind of just enjoy as a collective. That's how series like this become mega hits, and that's what we're kind of starting to see with Viral Hit. All of these things we've highlighted, I think, are good indicators for why Viral Hit stands out as a series, but the thing that really made me fall in love with it and why I think it's such an important series, especially right now, is just how timely it is. There are so many series that are evergreen classics that people continue to read and love over time, but they're not necessarily representative of what was going on in the world at the time. Like, I can read Dragon Ball and Naruto hundreds of times over, and they're great stories that work at any age, at any time, but they don't really feel like they're telling you anything about what was going on in the world at the time. Sometimes you have broader details that work their way in, but they're just big fantasy action stories that are interested in other things. They don't want to remind you of the real world. I think Viral Hit is so exciting because it isn't just set in a very grounded vision of the world, but what's going on in the story feels like a very natural extension of the desperation that is kind of going on in the world. You know, Hobin is surrounded by constant fighting, but it's because he's kind of stuck in this oppressed system. He doesn't want to be doing any of this, and it's more a kind of condemnation of society. You know, like, Hobin is only fighting because it's what people are paying to watch on YouTube. If there wasn't an audience for that, he wouldn't be able to do this. You know, if people were willing to pay him to do other things, he would do that instead. And so I think it is a really interesting idea of how society can be very oppressive, how it can make people feel like they're trapped, they don't have options, and that they have to jump into doing desperate things. There are a lot of series that get into that territory, whether it's something like Squid Game or like Techno Lies. These are shows that make the characters feel hopeless, and they have to think outside the box in order to just do anything to get like a modicum of respect and survival in the world. But as much as this is putting a strain on Hobin, I do think it's a really interesting way to just look at society, the 1% of the world, and those that can actually fund Hobin's violent habit here. And I mean, I think that's just as interesting in Viral Hit, that it does kind of cast a broader net to the people that are interested in this type of thing and how the world has gotten so far gone. I mean, I think that's very interesting territory to explore, especially when you connect that to social media. There are endless series, movies, books that explore kind of the exaggeration of social media, internet infamy, and how being popular online is almost the equivalency of having status in real life. There are things like nerve, self-reliance, guns akimbo, anime specifically. You have stuff like No Game, No Life, and Gamers. These are all shows that are very much connected to social media status, online activity, and just the gamification of survival in a way that's really interesting. There's been so many death game series that have become more popular over time. Viral Hit doesn't necessarily qualify as a death game, but it takes that same tension and that same anxiety and almost does a more realistic version of it. It's sad to consider that what Hobin is doing is the kind of thing you can see going on in the real world. This is an exaggerated story, but it's not that hard to picture this kind of thing going on in the real world. And that, to me, is what makes Viral Hit so exciting. We have so many anime and manga and just stories now that are set in fantastical worlds or worlds that are on Earth, but, you know, just so far in the future or just changed in a fundamental way that we can't connect with it, like a Ready Player One kind of, this is so outrageous, there's no connection point. Viral Hit does a really good job of how there is so much in this universe that we can connect with, that we can feel association with, and it feels like we're living in the story, which is a hard thing for a series to pull off. And at the same time, it's also just why I think Viral Hit is worth getting into, why it is interested in creating something realistic over something sensationalist, and that, you know, you can really skirt outside what's going on in the real world through what this story is positioning. And honestly, like, I think Viral Hit is kind of the perfect series to get into if you have a book club, because, like, after each volume of this series, all you want to do is just dissect it, you want to deconstruct it, you want to talk about not only the characters and the storytelling, but the themes that are present here. And thankfully, WEBTOON Unscrolled has done such a good job of taking series like Viral Hit and bounding them into actual graphic novels. Like, Viral Hit had a lot of fans online, but it can reach an even bigger audience now that WEBTOON Unscrolled has turned it into a tangible book. And, you know, for those that do have book clubs, you can now go to an online book retailer, you can go to any bookstore in real life and buy this book, have a copy of it, share it with people, and it kind of just feeds into the whole idea of like the future of fandom that WEBTOON Unscrolled is interested in. They want to just not engage with the community, but give them these kind of touchstones that can inspire, educate, and just contribute to a greater whole here. And I think the future of fandom, which is something that WEBTOON Unscrolled is really interested in, even connects to what's going on in Viral Hit, albeit in a very different way. Hoban needs to connect with his fans. He needs to understand his audience, and he needs to appease them, but also not lose himself in the process. The whole push and pull tug of war that Hoban is in with his audience is this interesting expression of the future of fandom too. It is a more toxic component to things, but I just think that it's interesting that this kind of broader idea of what is going on with fandom, the communities that exist online, and how we engage as a collective is expressed not only in Viral Hit, but that it kind of represents like the grander picture of what WEBTOON Unscrolled is achieving with series like Viral Hit, but just also all the titles that they have given this graphic novel showcase. Viral Hit is one of the most exciting WEBTOON Unscrolled series that have been released, but I think it's interesting and important to also kind of take stock of the series' evolution. Viral Hit started as a South Korean manhwa before it became a WEBTOON gem that was then adapted into a WEBTOON Unscrolled graphic novel where it's even reaching a larger audience and just continuing to connect with people, which is so exciting. But in addition to all of that, Viral Hit has also received a 12-episode anime adaptation, and I think this is just a really fun separate counterpoint to what Viral Hit's WEBTOON Unscrolled graphic novel is doing. It does a very good job of capturing the style, the artistry of the graphic novel, but just doing something a little different with it too. I think it's always fun to consume an anime adaptation and just see what it's doing differently. In the case of Viral Hit, it doesn't really go off book and do its own thing. It is a very faithful adaptation of what's going on in the WEBTOON Unscrolled graphic novel. It's only 12 episodes, so it doesn't adapt the entire story. That being said, it was only released in summer 2024, so it's very possible that more of the anime is on the way. It was a popular hit, so I would be surprised, honestly, if there wasn't more of the Viral Hit anime coming out, but I think it's important to recognize that Viral Hit is just having continued success outside of the WEBTOON Unscrolled graphic novel, that the anime has resonated with a big crowd too. I do think it's fun to experience both in tandem, see what's the same, what's different, how you might prefer something going on in one than the other, but they do complement each other in a really satisfying way that you don't always get with anime adaptations. And even just off of that, there have been a number of international live action adaptations of Viral Hit that have been announced, which I think also just speaks to not only the timeliness of this series, but just the human element at the core of it. It's no surprise that all these different countries have seen something special in Viral Hit's story and want to do their own version of it. And I think it'll honestly be very exciting to see how many different versions of the same general premise just go in different directions. We can all relate to the same general idea of oppression, wanting to protect our family and feeling helpless in some regards, but I think all of these different series will go about that in a different way, which is just really, really cool. And I think the fact that Viral Hit is receiving so many international adaptations just speaks to the idea that it is kind of being seen as this next big hit. There's no way that after all these adaptations, Viral Hit won't even be more popular. So I think now is the time to get in on the ground floor of this series. I would be surprised if it didn't reach the same heights as some of the other more popular WEBTOON Unscrolled graphic novels like Tower of God, God of High School, Now Bless. All of those series had similar trajectories and have just kind of become some of the biggest series in the world on a global level. It is just so exciting. So I do think we're seeing the same thing going on with Viral Hit now. I do think there's going to be a lot more Viral Hit to come, and now is a great time just to get involved now that the WEBTOON Unscrolled graphic novels are happening. I think it's a testament to how WEBTOON Unscrolled really is just this curator for cutting edge content, that they understand how to celebrate popular culture and just where the future of fandom is headed. They have such a good sense on what is going to connect with people, and Viral Hit is just the latest example of that. It is so cool. And oh, do you hear that, fellow otaku? Yeah, if I am not mistaken, that's the sound of a big three coming at ya. The big three. Okay, the big three is Den of Otaku's dedicated odds and ends segment. There is just so much anime, so much manga, so much content out there that it's impossible to consume it all. So the big three is kind of our just, little secret way of telling you what you should check out, what is worth your time, whether it's old or new. And in honor of Viral Hit, I thought we would keep sharing that love and focus on just a few other series that are Taejun Pak series or series that are part of Taejun Pak's larger company. So all of these titles are kind of connected to Viral Hit in one way or another. And Taejun Pak is such an interesting individual. You know, sometimes you have storytellers that immediately just started creating manga or manhwa or webtoons and found success with that. Taejun Pak is interesting in the sense that he kind of ping-ponged between a bunch of odd jobs. Like he worked in modeling for a minute, he did part-time work on like variety shows. I think that's all really cool, and it kind of took him some time before he realized that his true passion is storytelling, and he's found such success in that clearly this is what he should be doing. But I do think it's always just interesting when you have someone that kind of took some time to end up where they need to, and how those experiences in other fields can kind of just inform the sort of stories that someone wants to tell. I think it's also very cool that Taejun Pak's series all kind of exist in the same connected universe. So Viral Hit is connected to the series we're about to talk here. Normally, these aren't big connections. It's not like you have characters directly crossing over. Sometimes it's just small little Easter eggs or little ideas or themes. But I do think that kind of is a testament to Taejun Pak's galaxy brain that he's working with here. That these are full, complete series, but they're also much bigger than that. That he's kind of creating this larger universe that has shared rules, that complement each other, that he has the luxury of kind of doing some big crossover down the road if he wants. He doesn't have to either, but I also just think it's a good way to engage with fans. If you like Viral Hit, you're more likely to like these other series because they do exist in the same universe. There's a possibility that characters from these series might show up in Viral Hit. You might have Viral Hit stuff showing up in these series. So I just think that's another fun thing too, that more and more storytellers are taking into consideration. But I think Taejun Pak was ahead of the curve here, and it's part of the reason that so many people have enjoyed his works and what's going on with WEBTOON Unscrolled. So the first of these series in the big three is Lookism. Now Lookism is Taejun Pak's other big series. It's about as popular as Viral Hit is. It also has an anime adaptation, and much like Viral Hit, it does the same idea of taking a very simple story, but breaking it down in a really creative, unique way that just like gets to the human condition in a way that is so interesting and satisfying. So in Lookism, you have an individual who can change between two bodies, one of which is handsome and the other is ugly. Now, bullying is a big theme that kind of runs through all of Pak's work. It's very much on display here, and it kind of scratches the same surface of what's going on in Viral Hit in terms of societal prejudices, but goes a little deeper. You know, you're looking at a very direct example of like people who are attractive, have an easier life, those that aren't, you know, have to struggle and work harder, and it does a really good job of highlighting that kind of schism that exists in society and how a lot of people are guilty of these prejudices even if they realize it or not. There is some satisfying action in the story, just like there is with Viral Hit 2, so if you really responded to Viral Hit's action, Lookism is still going to satisfy you, and both of these series go to really dark places as well. So Lookism, a really exciting title, need to check it out. The next Taejun Pak hit is My Life as a Loser. Now, My Life as a Loser is another very creative body swapping subversion, much like Lookism. In My Life as a Loser, you have a former high school bully who kind of is forced to relive the high school experience, but this time as one of his victims. So you get this really creative, like, walk a mile in someone else's shoes kind of story, but there's a big twist that happens kind of early on that turns it into a totally different story. So it's not just this like power fantasy making someone feel bad for the bad person they were. It's more interested in really digging deep into character and just looking at the butterfly effect of how you affect different people's lives. It's such a really cathartic story. It has like as perfect as an ending as you can have in a series. I cried during the ending at multiple times. It really just hits the notes so hard. At the same time, there is a sequel, My Life as a Loser 2. That being said, you don't need to read it. It is an interesting pivot point from what's done in the first series, but My Life as a Loser tells a complete story. You can end there and be satisfied, and it is just hitting a lot of the same notes that both Viral Hit and Lookism do, that it's just really, really powerful storytelling. And the last of these is Tales of Greed. Tales of Greed is a little different, that it's kind of an anthology of 7 one-shot stories that are all about people who acquire powerful technology that they kind of get out of hand with, that they could have had simple lives if they could just let sleeping dogs lie and not go out of hand, but instead they all get too greedy, they all push this technology to a dangerous place, and things go poorly for them as a result. It's kind of like The Laughing Salesman meets Black Mirror. You get these really exciting monkey's paw stories that could be happy endings if people could just have some restraint and modesty in life. That's not how this goes, though. Everyone wants a little more, everyone goes further, and it's such a fun, easy binge. There's 7 one-shot stories, so they're so easy to just burn through them. It's in a dark universe that's very similar to Viral Hit. Like, it's honestly not difficult to picture Hobin's situation in Viral Hit as being one of the stories from Tales of Greed. The whole situation he finds himself in and how he's kind of pushed to a darker and darker place in order to survive is pure Tales of Greed. So if just the basic premise of Viral Hit resonates with you, check out Tales of Greed, because it really does some interesting stuff, and it's low-key, I think, one of his better works. So once again, for the Taejun Pak Big 3, we have Lookism, My Life as a Loser, and Tales of Greed. And unfortunately, fellow otaku, that's all the time we have in this episode before I get isekai'd back to reality. We would once again like to thank WEBTOON Unscrolled, and we'd like to thank you, for going on this adventure with us, because without you, we've got nothing, everyone. So we'll see you later, Space Cowboys.